Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. Welcome to today's Grain Market Blast. Sorry for the slow start. I'm having some technical issues, and also my battery might be about to die on my laptop, which I've had to flip over from the mobile. So apologies if it all cuts out. But before it does,
I just love everything about that sentence.
well,
Anyway, do the legals. Sorry.
yeah, yeah, I'll do the legals then when you can crack on. As usual, nothing discussed in the space of constitute trading or investment advice or info as any kind of endorsement by PIQ, Angie, or myself. And Angie is about to give you the ultimate rapid roundup of the latest price and flows, market moving news in agricultural markets. Over to you, my darling.
I'm not going to say anything, but I just love it. Later on today, I would like you to tell me again about what happened to your battery and your mobile phone. And I will love it. I'm going to cherish it forever. Anyway, happy Friday. We made it. It's almost time for non-farm pints if you're in London. I'm not.
There
I'm
you go.
jealous. I'm sad. But I'm there in spirit, so I guess I'll start drinking at 10 a.m. Who cares? Anyway,
Exactly.
I really won't do that, by the way, if any of my customers are listening. And to get started today, just what are we paying attention to? I think we may have, kind of transitioned away from, and we've talked about this a lot, right? The sentiment, the emotion. The sooner you recognize that we operate on a pendulum, the better off we all are. And we're kind of starting to see the pendulum shift when it comes to sentiment. 2-3 weeks ago, it was, oh my gosh, we're going to have all of these trade deals put together. It's going to be great for agricultural commodities. It's only a matter of hours before we hear about all of them, and we're all excited. And then slowly, after about 10 days, it was like, oh gosh, we're never going to have a trade deal announced. Everything's ruined forever and ever. I'm so sad. And now we're slowly working our way back to where it's like, wait a minute, maybe this won't go on forever. And so, we saw officials from China finally coming out and saying, and I think they really wanted to be able to say this, where they're like, listen, high level people from the administration have repeatedly been trying to get a hold of us. And so we're kind of
Yeah,
sick of it. You know what I mean? So I guess we'll open the door to talks. And so that's what you saw, a bit of a softer approach, if you will, from China overnight, saying that they're taking a look or are ready to engage in a meaningful discussion. My favorite thing about how China is approaching the trade war currently is that they're exempting just the bulk of the goods that really have an economic impact on their
yeah,
overall.
yeah,
They're like, oopsie, yeah, it's 125% tariffs, except for on like a quarter of our stuff. Like Bloomberg reported this morning, it's like $40 billion worth of goods are not even being charged the levy when being imported. It's 131 items that is said to be dynamic too. So the best part about it is it's like if anyone says, hey, this is really starting to chap my butt, the government can say, all right, well, guess what? We can actually reduce the tariffs on butt chapping
exactly.
ointment.
There's going to be a lot of moving parts on this.
Yeah. And so I think it's a positive sign. Both countries do not want to do this. Neither country wants to do this. They can't afford it. We saw the economic news out of both. You know what I mean? Like China saw a huge drop in their export orders. They saw a huge drop in their manufacturing activity. They're seeing massive layoffs starting to take place in their trucking and logistics side of things. A lot of folks, on the freight side of the industry or that I pay attention to that are smart about freight, are really kind of saying, hey, we're 2 to 3 weeks away from seeing what's happening in China currently take place in the US. If you talk about port, port inventories and port movement and this, that, and the other thing, and neither party really wants this to go on for a long time. Positive sign, though obviously how you get both parties, to look like a winner in this, we will see. But, one of those things where it's somewhat positive. I would say, in addition to other trade developments, we are seeing some expressed optimism over what the EU is going to present
Yeah,
next week. The European Union's come out and said, yeah, we will look at kind of rolling back some of these non-tariff trade barriers, maybe some of these
yeah,
regulations, maybe some of these other things. They're looking to buy an additional $50 billion worth of U.S. goods. A lot of folks had thought, we already knew it was going to probably be LNG, liquefied natural gas, and some of these other things. Soybeans was specifically mentioned, which is fun simply because if China does cut the U.S. out, which is unlikely that they're going to cut the U.S. out of all soybean procurement or whatever. But if they did, the EU would have to come to the US. And honestly, with the EUDR, the deforestation regulations that they've introduced, they're going to have to anyway. And so this is just one of those perfect examples of like, we already kind of have to, but let's make this look like something that we're doing in order to help the cause. And
yeah.
so fun, right? Japan's also working with the US to negotiate. There's some things that they're talking about in currency that's honestly above my pay grade. FX back and forth because Japan is the largest, one of the largest holders, I think the largest, right, of our.
Yeah, yeah, no, they massively.
Yeah,
Yep,
and
definitely.
so one of those things where they're like, we could be jerks to you, and really kind of
Yeah,
make
that was a bit of a
this.
bizarre thing to say because like that's the one thing you don't really want to be saying to
They said
Trump
the
because you're like,
quiet
well,
part out
fine.
loud. Like they're just like,
Yeah, no,
listen,
exactly
we
that,
don't we
exactly
don't
that.
wanna, but we will. And so that was interesting. And they and the EU are said to be coming in and being like, hey, roll back everything and we will do what you're asking. And the
Yeah.
administration right now is kind of like, we're kind of hoping to have all these deals put together and keep the 10%. Like,
Yes.
so we'll see. We'll see how that all plays out over the weekend. But I would say right now, sentiment is probably going to shift back to, hey, we're going to get some deals done because we gotta. Um,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly the vibe I'm
is
getting.
it good? I'm glad we're on the same page.
Of course we are.
Going forward too, we've got Russia and Ukraine. Yeehoo! We did see Russia come out, and this is my favorite thing. So just you can share this with your friends if you want. Russia's spokesperson or whoever, a mouthpiece, someone anyway from Russia came out and said that the natural resources deal between Ukraine and the U.S. was an effort by the Washington, D.C. deep state to derail President Trump's peacemaking efforts. Let's
Okay.
laugh about that one. I just thought it was like, okay, so they mad. They big mad about that. And we've talked
Yeah.
about this, right? Like this, to have the US have an economic interest in Ukraine and Ukraine's territory, especially with Russia, kind of pushing forward into some of these areas that are thought to be where the large, amounts of minerals and things like that are. Like
Yeah.
the where this war is taking place is really kind of an industrial belt of Ukraine. If you look at it, your minerals, your energy, your oil, your a lot
Yeah.
of this stuff. And so, like I've said, I think you're starting to see more and more people kind of speak a little bit louder on it. Smarter people than myself, which makes me feel better. Like you ever have an opinion and you wait to see if anyone else is like kind of that's smarter than you, kind
Yeah.
of.
All the time.
Yeah, and so you're like, okay, I'm not completely out there. I still am, but maybe not entirely. But to see the U.S. have this economic interest and have Ukraine create an economic partnership with the U.S., in my opinion, changes a lot of the dynamic in
Yes.
the
Yeah.
region.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think Russia sees the same. Not to mention, you have this shift in dynamic in the region with the U.S. having an economic interest. Russia's saying they're now colonized, which is funny to me. Like Russia's like, well, you guys don't even know what you're getting into. Really, you are warring with them. You know what I mean? Like, so don't make it too obvious that you're upset about this. But the thing that
Yeah.
I'm really watching right now is like the way for Trump to really push Russia to the table is to really tighten the screws from a sanctions standpoint. And the way to really help Trump not only bolster US energy, right, by raising crude prices, by he's already cutting off Iran, we're looking to possibly cut off Russia. You sanction, if you were to sanction some of their agricultural exports, some of these other things, like, yeah, like we've already seen that the administration is willing to create pain to get results.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's something to pay attention to because I think, Trump's basically been like, listen, Vladimir, I'm sick of your shit. Like, and honestly, I have some power that you don't think I do. And
Yeah.
I am just crazy enough to use it. And
Well, and also, like you said, it would tighten the screws on Putin, and also, and and if he does sanction, commodity like agricultural exports, that's kind of where are people going to get them from if they're not getting them from
the
Russia? It's kind
US,
of
it would
exactly.
benefit the
It
US
ticks
in a
two
major
exactly
way.
it ticks two big boxes for them,
Yeah.
right?
And so it's one of those things that we have to pay attention to because I do think, there are, we could joke all we want to about 4D chess or whatever, but like this administration thinks, well, all administration, like I'm not saying just this one is super, but like we're thinking in multifaceted approaches, and so this is definitely something to watch, especially when you bring the EU in, because the EU is now talking about introducing another round of hefty sanctions as well, the
Yeah.
European Union. And so with the US kind of tied in tight with Ukraine, and with the US trying to come up with something tight on trade with the EU, this could be something that they really could work together on to push back
Yeah.
Russia. So just really, it's fun. I'm having fun watching all of these dynamics come together, but definitely something. The Russia-Ukraine situation is far from over, and I think that's part of why you're seeing the market kind of perk up a little bit here. And there's some weather issues out there that, like Ukraine's except a little dry, something to pay attention to, yada, yada, yada. Really last bullet point goes back to supply and demand stuff. We did get yesterday's export sales. They were decent, in line with expectations. Corn exports still look like they will beat the USDA's current thoughts. Now we're just arguing over what cash is doing, what cash looks like. Is carry out as tight as what it some folks think it is. Is it not? We're going back and forth there. Weather has kind of turned a little bit. The Eastern Corn Belt was supposed to dry out next week. It doesn't look like it will be as dry. We got a cutoff low or a handful of cutoff lows meandering their way through the Ohio Valley. So you could see some talk of, potential planting delays, though honestly, at this point, nothing overly concerning. NAS figures yesterday showed ethanol grind was actually a little slower than expected for February, but soybean crush was better than expected. And then we had jobs data this morning beat traders' expectations. So is that a positive sign that maybe the recession that we've, maybe it's not coming, maybe it is, I don't know, we'll see. But yeah, I think that's about it for our Friday. Just really going to be watching developments between Russia. Graham's got that bill that he's putting out there.
Yeah.
I think Russian-Ukraine situation, big one. India and Pakistan looks like it's maybe. I haven't seen anything in the headlines to say
Well,
that
yeah, this
it's
is it. It's like, I think no news. It's one of those that no news is good news, I think, on that
at
front.
this
So yeah,
point. Yeah, no one's launched anything on anyone. We are seeing Rubio kind of actively work with India to kind of calm that situation, I think. So we have some geopolitical things to be paying
yeah,
attention to. Trump did limit Iran's, or is in the process of limiting Iran. Something happened there. They were supposed to meet. They're not gonna. Now
yeah.
we're limiting their oil exports. That's why you saw crude kind of rebound yesterday. But yeah, should be fun. By Monday, we'll have more clarity on what we have no clarity on today, but we'll have a lot less clarity on the other things. So we don't even know what we need to have clarity on at this point. So there you go.
Exactly that. Exactly. But Angie, thank you so much as always for being an absolute star. I know we always say it, but listeners, we really do appreciate you listening in. Whatever you're doing today and the weekend, have a lovely time. Stay safe, stay out of trouble, and we'll see you next week. Have a great one.
Have a great weekend, guys.